These are the video notes for Objective 5, Fundamental Identities. Let's talk first about what identities we're going to be referring to. Any trigonometric identity is simply a statement of equality that's always true. Some identities we've already been using in our class are things like cosecant theta is equal to 1 over sine theta. This we've called a reciprocal identity. The three reciprocal identities that we're most familiar with are cosecant theta equals 1 over sine theta, secant theta equals 1 over cosine theta, and cotangent theta is equal to 1 over tangent theta. The other identities that we've already been using in class are the quotient identities for tangent and cotangent. So we've also used in the past, the other identities that we've used in class are the quotient identities, which state that tangent theta is sine theta over cosine theta, and that cotangent theta is cosine theta over sine theta. There is another set of identities that we're going to add to this list of fundamental identities that we'll be using for this objective, and these are called the Pythagorean identities. So the Pythagorean identities stem from the unit circle. If you could imagine that theta were an angle on the unit circle, then we know the hypotenuse is 1, and we know that the ordered pair is cosine, comma, sine, which means that the legs are cosine and sine. If we apply the Pythagorean theorem to this specific triangle, we get that sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1 squared, which is 1. This is the first Pythagorean identity. The remaining Pythagorean identities are simply derived from this one. So let's derive those identities ourselves, but keep in mind all three Pythagorean identities are on the formula sheet that we are using for this class. So let's begin with the first Pythagorean identity. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is equal to 1. We can derive the next Pythagorean identity by dividing the entire equation by sine squared. Sine squared over sine squared is 1. Cosine over sine is cotangent, so this is cotangent squared. And 1 over sine is cosecant, so this is cosecant squared. This here is the second Pythagorean identity. The third Pythagorean identity comes from the same original, except instead of dividing by sine squared theta, we're going to divide by cosine squared theta. Sine squared over cosine squared is tangent squared. Cosine squared over cosine squared becomes 1, and 1 over cosine squared is secant squared. So in summary, the three Pythagorean identities are sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1, 1 plus cotangent squared theta equals cosecant squared theta, and tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared theta. In the next video, we'll talk about how to use these identities to simplify expressions.